It's my boy's Toyota Yaris. As you can see up here, we're looking pretty thin. Alright folks, so that's 2 coats of wax. And that's as good as this is going to get. Now, let's go over some of the products that I used to make it look like that. Okay, so the very first thing I did after washing the roof off was took some 320, sanded down all that messed up clear coat and the spots where there was no clear coat, got everything down to kind of a almost looked white with the 320, and then I think I actually might have used a sheet of 400 just because I had it. I tried to use DA, but my little rinky-dinky compressor over there wasn't enough to run it, but it was mostly 320. After that, then I washed it down again, got all the dust off. I used this Dupli-Color prep spray on there, wiped it down with a microfiber towel. The way this says, you just spray it on the surface, wipe it off in straight lines. And of course I don't have it here in front of me, but then I took a tack cloth and then wiped the entire hood down in straight lines. There's just the generic tack cloths from Lowe's is what I got. Then I used a N95 from Harbor Freight for a little protection when I put on the primer. And I decided to prime it because basically I don't know what I'm doing as a first time, home painter with spray cans. So I used this flat black primer from Rustoleum, and I used almost 2 cans of it. Just went back and forth long ways, then went back and forth at a perpendicular angle, short ways, and then back and forth long ways. And I think I did basically 3 coats with it to get it covered and looking uniform. It was about 2 cans of this. After that dried, I took some 500 grit and sanded the primer down to where it was pretty much uniform and blew all that off with compressed air. I used that stuff again, sprayed it on there, wiped it off, used the tack cloths again. This is the way it is now. Then what I did was I used plain old regular Rustoleum and just the regular black, not the double coverage. And I did 2 coats of this, two really good coats of it, and this stuff does coat pretty easy. And this can is almost empty. I believe I used 2 cans of that. And then to get a little bit of that metallic in there, because I couldn't really find black metallic. I'm sure that they sell it, but I couldn't find it at Lowe's or Home Depot. This is oil rubbed bronze, and I had played around with this color. I really, really like it. It's beautiful. It is just not quite black, but after the 2 good coats of this, then I took that and then sprayed on, I would say a lighter to medium coat of it. Didn't use the whole can. There's probably about 1/3 of this left in here. And then I just let it sit. I let it sit for a day. Came back and had, this is what's left. I had the Harbor Freight brand 1500 grit. But then I used 1500 grit to kind of color sand down. This stuff, not very much, just a little bit. And I did it all by hand. I had a sanding block, but I found it was more of a pain and kind of wasted the paper than if I just did it by hand. Again, I'm not looking for show quality here. I just did what felt right. So sanded all that down, washed it off again, used that stuff again. This stuff is great because there's still some left. Used the tack cloths again. And then I went on with the clear. And what I wound up doing was I used, there's just a little bit of this left. I used 2 whole cans of the 1K clear from Dupli-Color. And same thing, I went lengthwise front to back on the car, started in the middle, and then I just went perpendicular, side to side, driver's side to passenger side. I did basically 1 can of this is about 1 coat. It was 1 coat on the Yaris. And then I finished up with, critical errors. I finished up with Rustoleum clear for another 3rd coat. And it wasn't an error. It looked great. It was no problem. I wouldn't be surprised if they're the pretty much same product. And if I was going to do it over again, because this is cheaper, I'd probably just use the Rustoleum clear, the 2X clear. It looks great. I've used it a couple times on other things. No qualms about that at all. And so I had basically 3 coats of color, and then 3 coats of clear, 2 with this, 1 with that. Side note, okay, so that's what the car looks like now. I'll get to the buffing and polishing here in a minute. After the primer, I used this for color, and I had 4 cans of it. And number one, this stuff does not have a great spray pattern. You can work with that, sure, but the problem I had with this was that it seemed to come out almost dry. And I'm not sure if you're supposed to paint complete panels with this. It does say scratch, nick, and chip repair, vehicle trim and accessories. Maybe I was overextending the use case of it. But when I painted this, I had 4 cans of it. I put almost all 4 cans on the top of that car, and it almost looked like there was snow on top of the car. And following the directions, again, not having a whole lot of experience here, it does say allow paint to dry 10 minutes between coats and 30 minutes before applying Dupli-Color perfect match protective clear coat. So that's what I did. I waited 30 minutes and I put on the Dupli-Color clear, and it just cleared the awfulness. Did not help at all. Looked absolutely terrible. So I ended up sanding all of that down with, actually I think I went down to 500 grit on some really rough spots, but I ended up finishing that off with 1000 grit. I went back and forth between 600 grit, 1000 grit, 500, and some really rough spots, because it was rough like sandpaper. After this stuff was on there, it was rough. And then when I cleared over it, then that made it hard and rough. And I just needed to knock all that down smooth, or smoother. And so I again mixed with 600 up to 1000, and that's when I stepped it back to doing this 2 coats, 1 coat, 2 coats, finish coat with this. I was not impressed with this. I was very disappointed, and it is not cheap. It's about $12 a can. Totally not worth it. All it did was waste my time. I lost 4 or 5 days because of trying to use that to do an entire panel. My fault? I don't know. Couldn't tell you. But that was my experience. So after I got the clear on there, about 24 hours later, I took some 2000 and just hand sanded it down, knocked down all the high spots, and it looked a little rough. Wet sanded. Everything I did was wet sand. Wet sanded it down, and it didn't look bad, but it certainly wasn't good. So let it dry and cure and all that stuff for about 4 days. And then I came back with, got the Drill Master DA buffer polisher from the Hazard Fart here. Borrowed that from my dad, actually. And I used the McGuire's medium cut cleaner that I got from Oreilly's. It's $20 a bottle here. I used the compound cutting pad, the Warrior brand from Harbor Freight, with the medium cut cleaner. And then this is very runny. You can hear it. It's very runny, so I, kind of seasoned this pad with it, kind of just pressed it in with my fingers, got it in the pad, and then I would put a little line in the area that I was going to buff with it. And, as you see on the videos, just kind of smooth it around a little bit before I even turn the DA on. I would turn it on setting 1, smear the stuff out all over the area, turn it on setting 4, and then I would polish it back and forth. And what I wound up doing, because I did have a couple spots where I felt like I was maybe starting to burn through, I would do one nice slow pass back and forth this way, and then I would go the opposite way once, and then I would finish it off with a little bit faster of the long ways with it. So I basically did 3 passes with this stuff on each section of the roof that I did. And I switched pads, went over to the Warrior, they're fine, they're polishing pad, much softer. And then I used this stuff, the McGuire's, also from Oreilly's, $20 for this bottle. I used this and did the same process, basically 3 passes with each section I did. And this definitely took out the spots where I was almost burning through the clear coat and it dulled down. This brought it back, and I'm glad I took the time to do this. Then after that, I finished up with 2 coats of this McGuire's Gold Class Carnauba Plus. I've had this for years. This is not a new can at all. That's how I got to where I'm at with the car. I'm very happy with it. That's all the stuff. Just what's on my table right there, with excluding the polisher, that's about $90 worth of products just right there, maybe closer to 100. If you already have some of this stuff, clearly it won't be as much. But if you've got to buy a polisher, a DA polisher, buffer, the Drill Master, I don't know, what is that, $50 or $60 at Harbor Freight? So you can add that to your total also. You know, and then all the different grits of sandpaper. The masks are pretty cheap. You probably should get a respirator if you're doing stuff inside. I couldn't even paint a roof on my son's car for $100 just doing spray cans. So if you see those videos where they say, you know, do it for, you know, 30, 40 bucks, or, you know, a couple of cans or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how to do that. I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm just saying I don't know how they get those results with that, because this is what I used. And, you know, and I had duplicates, you know, in 3-4 times as many cans as what's here. So I was probably up around 180 bucks or so with all the different products I had. I could have saved $45 had I not messed with this at all. So I would say if you just did it the Rustoleum with Rustoleum color, primer, and even just, let's say, the Rustoleum clear, use the Dupli-Color prep spray, the sandpaper, you know, get yourself some good buffing compounds. You're probably looking at least 100, maybe 120 bucks if you don't have to buy a polisher. So again, with tempering expectations, that was my experience. That got me to the results that I got, and I hope that it helps you a little bit, especially if you're nervous about the first time, or you thinking some of those videos are too good to be true. If you're using these products, it is too good to be true. If I ever do it again, I will probably have a custom color mixed up and put into an aerosol can. I've got my 2002 Camaro that desperately needs some help, where the clear coat is gone and even the color is gone on some areas of the hatch, and it's what happens to cars outside over time. But hopefully this helps you. If you have any questions, please let me know, and good luck with your project.